Chancellor Olaf Scholz says Berlin will not supply Ukraine with long-range Taurus cruise missiles. Now, Scholz cited the missile's extreme range and the fact that it would not be possible for Germany to remotely monitor target control. Taurus missiles can hit targets up to 500 kilometres away, and Scholz said the missile's deployment could increase the risk of Germany becoming involved in the war. DW's chief political correspondent Nina Haase told me more about what the Chancellor said about his decision.
Well, he made the statement in Berlin on Monday at a meeting of editors, and he said essentially that he doesn't want a situation where German expertise is directly used for choosing Russian targets. So German soldiers must under no circumstances be involved in choosing targets for those cruise missiles. And he stressed that it's vital that there are no German soldiers on Ukrainian soil. So he basically doesn't want Germany to be linked in any way to the targets that this very powerful system can reach. He doesn't want Germany to be drawn into this war with a system like that.
OK, and tell us about what the reaction has been to this announcement.
Well, I would say it's mixed. There are quite a lot of German voters in general who, in previous polls, have said that they appreciate the fact that Scholz always carefully weighs his options before he sends big weapon systems to Ukraine. We had a scenario when it came to those big tanks, the Leopard 2 tanks, that went on for months. And German voters do recognise that that is something that they appreciate their Chancellor for, that he doesn't take those decisions lightly. Military experts, though, are debating what the things are that he's not saying. So is Olaf Scholz afraid that Ukraine might do reverse engineering? So, in other words, manipulate the weapon once they've got it? Because Ukraine has said that they rule out that they target Russia directly, like Moscow. I mean, this is possible in theory with a Taurus, but they say they need this system to be able to hit targets, Russian military logistics, etc., to stop Russian troops advancing. But those targets, they say, are on Ukrainian soil. So this is something that people are debating. Is Olaf Scholz, does he not trust the Ukrainians? Or is it because Germany is not a nuclear power, unlike the Brits and the French, and that Scholz is worried about escalation and a lack of options for Germany if the Taurus delivery did indeed cause an escalation? I would say in general today the feeling is at last he's said something on Taurus again, because he's been very tight-lipped recently, has said in the past he wouldn't deliver it. But with Ukraine's situation on the battlefield getting worse because of a lack of ammunition and strategic weapons, pressure on him to express himself had been growing. So now he's spoken. But is this the end of the debate about whether Germany should deliver Taurus? I doubt it.
All right. DW's chief political correspondent Nina Haase. Nina, thank you so much for that. DW's Nick Connolly is also following this story for us from the Ukrainian capital. I asked him if Germany's decision is a huge disappointment for Kyiv.
I mean, it's certainly not unexpected, but it is disappointing. Just a few days ago at Volodymyr Zelensky's big press conference, our colleague Caroline Chimoy asked Zelensky what he thought about the chances of getting those Taurus missiles, and he seemed optimistic. He said that, as had been the case with the tanks, that he was expecting American action in the shape of ATACMS missiles that are expected to be sent by the Americans potentially, which have a longer range than previously supplied, that American decision could then see the Germans following suit, as had been the case in the past with other decisions on weapons. I'm not sure it's the be-all and end-all in all of this. You know, Ukraine has received cruise missiles with comparable ranges from the UK, from France. Interesting that Olaf Scholz will be in Paris today and meeting with Emmanuel Macron, who seemingly didn't have those same fears about being drawn into the war just because France has sent these missiles. But I think it will add to the frustration here that there's a sense that Olaf Scholz and his Social Democratic Party in that ruling coalition in Germany are always putting the brakes on, whereas the Greens and the Liberals are a lot more on the same kind of hymn sheet, as it were, as the Ukrainians in terms of the need to move on. It's not like Olaf Scholz has something else to give the Ukrainians in a hurry. He said that the Ukrainians needed shells, not cruise missiles, but he doesn't have a huge mountain of shells to send to Kyiv as a kind of compensation. That is just not on the cards for now.
Nick, if we could just talk about what's happening in the war. The Ukrainian army, we know, has now pulled back from Avdiivka. Are you expecting to see the Russian army continue pushing forward in the coming days?
Well, we've heard in the last 24 hours that the Ukrainian army has now left a further village west of Avdiivka called Lastochkino. There is the kind of line coming out of the military here that this was a planned retreat to basically get to more advantageous positions to kind of hold an easier defensive line. I think it doesn't have to mean that we're going to see a collapse of the front lines. We saw the same after Bakhmut, where Russia invested a huge number of its own lives in getting the city and then basically wasn't able to get a whole lot further in the months that followed. The optimistic line is that the same will be the case with Avdiivka, but obviously that lack of shells is crucial. We heard from Ukrainian soldiers that were fighting Avdiivka that they were outgunned 5-1. So they were basically just having to really weigh up every shell, sometimes using drones instead, because they didn't have anything to fire back at the Russians. So if that stays, we could see the Ukrainians having to make more defensive retreats than obviously they'd want to.
Nick, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks so much for that update. That's DW's Nick Connolly reporting from Kyiv.